The United States Army has taken a Chevrolet Silverado, the same heavy-duty pickup parked in driveways across America, and turned it into a machine built for war. Not a render, not a slideshow concept. A running prototype built on a production truck that can roll through a contested battlefield in near silence. And on a modern battlefield where a thermal scope or a cheap drone can spot an engine's heat from miles away, silence is not a luxury. It is the line between being seen and staying alive. The most powerful army on the planet just put serious money behind a truck wearing a Chevrolet badge. And what makes that surprising is not the badge, it is the thinking behind it. For decades, the answer to a battlefield problem was to build something new from scratch, spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and wait the better part of a decade for the first vehicle to reach a soldier. This is the Army quietly tearing that playbook in half. So what does a Silverado actually do once the military gets hold of it? And why is the Pentagon paying close attention? The answer starts a few years earlier with a different truck and a number that raised eyebrows across the defense industry. Before the Silverado, there was the Colorado. In June 2020, the Army awarded GM Defense, the defense division of General Motors, a contract worth $214.3 million to build a new vehicle called the M1301 Infantry Squad Vehicle, or IASV. Run the simple math on that contract, 649 vehicles for $214.3 million, and you land on roughly $330,000 per truck. GM Defense has said that figure is not strictly accurate because the contract folds in years of support and sustainment, not just the steel. But the number stuck, and it tells you something real about what these vehicles cost once everything is counted. What GM Defense built was unlike anything the Army had fielded. They took a Chevrolet Colorado ZR2, a civilian off-road pickup you could buy at a dealership, and stripped it to the bone. Off came the cab, off came the doors. In its place went a roll cage and an open frame, leaving something that looks like a cross between a desert race truck and a dune buggy. The chief engineer described it bluntly. The ISV is a Colorado ZR2 from the waist down. Roughly 90% of its parts come straight from the commercial supply chain. The same 2.8-liter Duramax turbo diesel, the same 6-speed automatic transmission, the same suspension components proven in desert racing. And that ordinary supply chain is the whole point. When a purpose-built military vehicle breaks down at a remote outpost, you wait for specialized parts that may be an ocean away. When an ISV breaks down, a mechanic is working with components that exist in civilian garages everywhere. The philosophy was speed, simplicity, and agility chosen over armor. The ISV carries a full 9-soldier infantry squad. It can be slung beneath a UH-60 Black Hawk, loaded inside a CH-47 Chinook, or dropped from a C-130. The moment it touches the ground, the squad is already moving. The Army did not buy a handful of these. By November 2025, more than 900 infantry squad vehicles had been delivered to infantry brigade combat teams, with another 186 going to the 75th Ranger Regiment, units like the 82nd Airborne among the first to receive them. And the Army's total acquisition objective now runs into the thousands, with later budget documents pushing the long-term number far higher. The little stripped-down Colorado rewrote how American light infantry moves. But GM Defense was not finished. What they unveiled next did not just refine the idea, it pushed it into territory no tactical truck had entered before. In October 2024, at the Association of the United States Army annual meeting in Washington, one of the largest defense gatherings in the country, GM Defense pulled the cover off a prototype it called the Next Gen Tactical Vehicle. The base this time was not the compact Colorado. It was the Chevrolet Silverado HDZR2, the heavy-duty workhorse. And GM Defense did not simply bolt military gear onto a pickup. The machine underneath is fundamentally different, and the technology inside it is what makes this story worth telling. The next gen runs a diesel-electric hybrid drivetrain. It keeps the proven 2.8-liter Duramax turbo diesel, but pairs it with a 12-module battery pack and separate electric drive motors on the front and rear axles. In this configuration, the engine is rated around 186 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque, but the headline is not raw power. It is what the battery unlocks. A driver can tap both systems together or isolate the electric motors entirely and run the truck on battery power alone. GM Defense calls these modes Silent Drive and Silent Watch. Consider what that means in the field. A conventional military vehicle idling at low speed throws off heat and noise, exactly the two signatures that enemy drones, thermal scopes, and acoustic sensors are designed to hunt. Running on battery power, the next gen cuts both dramatically. A squad can creep through contested terrain with a fraction of the sound and heat of any combustion vehicle. GM Defense states the platform can sustain several days of silent watch and somewhere between 90 and 130 miles of silent drive on battery alone, depending on the load. That is not a brochure boast about comfort. It is a tactical edge against an adversary holding a $500 quadcopter. If you have ever wondered why the world's best-funded military would reach for a civilian truck instead of a clean sheet design, this hybrid system is the clearest answer yet. And it solves a problem most people outside defense circles have never heard of. It is called the power gap. And for years it has quietly limited what ground forces can do. Modern infantry squads are buried in electronics, night vision, encrypted radios, targeting systems, drone controllers, jammers. Every one of those devices needs electricity. Out beyond a forward base, that power traditionally comes from a generator or from leaving the engine running, which means more fuel burned, more noise, more heat, more logistical weight. The next gen changes that equation. Because of its onboard battery, the truck can push significant electrical power to external systems with the engine switched off. Park it, kill the diesel, and it becomes a silent, mobile power station feeding drone control stations, communications gear, and electronic warfare systems. GM Defense President Steve Dumont put it plainly at the unveiling, saying the next gen fundamentally changes the discussion around modern mobility by addressing the power gap in the formation. Strip away the jargon and it means a squad no longer has to choose between moving fast and staying powered up. The truck does both. It comes in 2-seat, 4-seat, and 6-seat cab configurations, and it can be adapted for command and control. Launched effects like loitering munitions, counter drone work, anti-armor rolls, and casualty evacuation. One platform, a dozen jobs. Here is something almost nobody outside the defense world is discussing, and it may be the most strategically significant part of this entire program. The Humvee, officially the High Mobility Multi-Purpose Wheeled Vehicle, entered Army service in 1985. That makes the average Humvee in today's fleet roughly 40 years old, 4 decades. In that span, the battlefield has transformed beyond recognition. Drone warfare, electronic warfare, long-range precision fires, and adversaries who can detect a vehicle by its heat, its sound, and its electronic emissions. And the Army is still rolling on a platform designed when the Cold War was the central concern. The next gen is not officially a Humvee replacement, at least not yet. The Army still has to evaluate the concept and decide whether the gap in the current fleet justifies a new program. and that decision has not been made public. But look at what it offers. It is built on a commercial platform, which keeps cost down and the supply chain simple. It is hybrid electric, which slashes fuel use and thermal signature. It is modular, reconfigurable without a fresh procurement cycle. And it leans on billions of dollars in commercial automotive research that the Army never had to fund. Set that against a ground-up military program that typically burns years and hundreds of millions before one vehicle reaches a soldier, and the logic gets hard to argue with. GM Defense says the vehicle can be customized and fielded now, not after a decade of development. So what does a soldier actually gain from all of this? Start with speed that costs nothing. The IS-5 already proved a light, agile truck can move troops faster than heavy armor across rough ground. The next gen keeps that and adds the ability to stop, stay, and operate, not just arrive. Then there is silent approach. In modern combat, the first unit detected is often the first unit targeted, and rolling up on a position at low speed with minimal sound and heat is a genuine advantage against an enemy armed with off-the-shelf drones. Add battlefield power independence. No cables strung between trucks, no engines idling to charge gear, no choosing between communications and concealment. The vehicle itself becomes the power grid. Add modular adaptability, the same truck reconfigured for reconnaissance one day and casualty evacuation the next. And finally, the quiet factor that may matter most over a long campaign, ease of maintenance. Because the Silverado HD is a production vehicle, its parts live in the civilian supply chain and mechanics trained on commercial trucks can keep it running. Zoom out and the next gen is not happening in isolation. Across the US military, there is a fundamental rethink of how ground forces survive in an age of cheap drones and peer-level adversaries. The old model, heavy vehicles tied to fixed bases and contractor-maintained fleets, does not survive contact with an enemy who can put a drone over any position in minutes. The emerging model is mobile, dispersed, harder to target, and built on technology already proven and manufactured at scale. The ISV showed the approach works, with hundreds of vehicles delivered and elite units already deploying them. In 2025, the Army expanded the family with the IS-5U, a 5-seat variant with a cargo bed for fire support, electronic warfare, and counter-drone work, planning to acquire well over 1,000 of them in fiscal year 2026 alone. And in October 2025, the Army tested a mortar system mounted on that variant, an 81mm M252 with 72 rounds and a digital fire control system for rapid targeting. That test was real. That is the direction this is heading. Which leaves one open question. Will trucks like the next gen reshape how American infantry fights? Given the track record of the ISV program, the more honest question is how fast, and whether a famously slow acquisition system can keep pace with the threat. The Army's newest piece of cutting-edge hardware is not a stealth jet or a hypersonic missile. It is a Chevrolet pickup, re-engineered to move in silence and power a squad's electronics from a dead engine. If this look inside the next gen changed how you think about where military innovation actually comes from, consider subscribing and leaving a comment with what you think should replace the aging Humvee. The story of how America is rebuilding its ground forces for the next era of warfare is only beginning, and the sharpest edge on the battlefield may turn out to wear a badge you already recognize.